Welcome to a journey of transformation. Every week, we explore new horizons, pushing boundaries and embracing what's next. This isn't just about technology, it's about evolving ourselves. Think of it as your weekly reset, a chance to upgrade your mindset, your skills, and your potential. We're here to help you rethink how you approach challenges, how you innovate, and ultimately, how you succeed. From powerful insights to practical strategies and game-changing knowledge, we tap into everything you need. It's about staying ahead, not just in a digital world, but in life itself, equipping you for every new beginning. Because in this fast-paced era, standing still is simply not an option. Growth is continuous. You either choose to evolve, to adapt, and to learn, or you risk being left behind. Embrace the change. This isn't just an update. It's a profound rebirth, a chance to redefine your future, to step into your power, and to truly thrive. It's about unlocking your next level. Join us on this exciting path. Embrace your new beginning. Your journey starts now.
All right. There are moments in life when the road in front of you feels endless. The weight gets heavier and the distance feels longer. Your body gets tired and your mind starts asking whether you have enough left to keep going. And sometimes the hardest battle is not about finishing the entire journey. Sometimes the battle is simply making the decision to continue for one more day. And tonight's episode is personal. Over the last several weeks, I rode my motorcycle across the country as part of what I call the One More Day project. 7,170 actual miles through Arizona desert heat, long highways, cross-country weather, multiple thousand-mile days, flat tire in Minnesota, a service dog fundraiser in Montana, a ferry ride across Lake Michigan, got to see old friends, meet new friends, veterans, civilians, had conversations, had some laughter, some exhaustion, and some setbacks. There was another tire problem I had in Spokane, motorcycle maintenance, a 25th wedding anniversary chicken dance, and one final push towards home. But this ride was never really about the miles. It was never just about proving that a 62-year-old man could sit on a motorcycle for 1,000 miles a day. It was never about collecting states, gas receipts, photographs, or bragging rights. The miles were only the vehicle. The real mission was veteran suicide awareness. The real message was simple. You are not alone. Never give up. And you're not, when looking too far ahead becomes overwhelming, do not just try to solve the rest of your life all at once. Just choose one more day, one more conversation, one more phone call. Heck, it can even be just one more sunrise, one more chance for things to change. Because sometimes one more day is enough to create a different ending. Tonight, I want to tell you about the ride. But more importantly, I want to tell you about what this ride taught me about endurance, purpose, brotherhood, pain, service, marriage, preparation, unexpected kindness from strangers, and the battles people fight that no one else can see. This is the story of the One More Day project. 15 segments, one mission. Let's ride. So, the One More Day project did not begin as a formal project. It began as something more personal. For about a year, I've been planning to ride cross country to visit my brother Tony in New York. Now, riding my motorcycle cross country has always been a bucket list item for me. Someday I was going to get on the bike, point it east, and ride across this country. But someday has a habit of remaining someday unless you put a date on a calendar. Life gets busy, responsibilities pile up, the timing just never feels right. Before long, years pass while the dream stays exactly where it started, in your imagination. As I began seriously discussing this trip, Molly encouraged me to make it happen. That encouragement mattered because a ride like this does not just affect the person on the motorcycle. It affects the people at home. It affects schedules, finances, responsibilities, communication, and most importantly, peace of mind. Molly understood what the trip meant to me. Instead of giving me reasons not to go, she encouraged me to stop talking about it as a distant idea and begin turning it into an actual plan. As we continued talking, several key points came into focus. The first was the trip to New York to visit Tony. Second was the annual canine care ride with my brothers from Warrior Creek in Great Falls, Montana. And the third was the decision to celebrate Molly and I our 25th wedding anniversary, and finally doing the chicken dance in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. Now, at first, these seemed like three separate events, but as we talked, the pieces began to fit together. A ride could take me east to New York, then work its way back west through the northern part of the country, stopping in Great Falls for the annual ride, and continuing to Spokane for our anniversary celebration, and then finishing with one final leg to Arizona. Now, originally, after visiting with Tony, I planned to ride to Philadelphia to visit some more family, but our sister told us her family would come to New York instead, and that changed the plan, and it opened up a whole different route west. Our nephew Elliot lives in Minnesota, and Tony suggested I should visit him on the way through. Well, once Minnesota became part of the route, Tony made another suggestion. There's a ferry in Michigan. Why don't you take the ferry across? And the idea added something special to the journey. Instead of riding all the way around the lake through Chicago, which is brutal, I could take the motorcycle onto the ferry and continue through Wisconsin towards Minnesota. And one suggestion led to another, one stop connected to the next, and eventually the route became finalized. From Yuma, Arizona to New York to the Lake Michigan Ferry, across Wisconsin, Minnesota, then on through North Dakota, Montana. Great Falls for the Canine Care fundraiser, Spokane for work, maintenance, and reflection, and our 25th wedding anniversary dance, chicken dance, and then the final leg south towards home. What started as a bucket list ride to see my brother had already become something much larger. And as I look back on that planning stage now, the part that stands out is how little of it I actually controlled. I set out to visit one brother. A sister rearranged a family visit. A nephew became a reason to change states. A ferry became a suggestion that I never would have thought of on my own. None of these pieces were mine to begin with. They belonged to the people around me, and I simply had the sense to say yes when they offered them. That is a harder lesson for a warrior type to accept than it sounds. We like to believe the mission is ours alone, but the truth is the best route I rode was built by other people's suggestions layered on top of my own. If I had insisted on doing it entirely my way, I would have missed the ferry, and I would have missed half of what made this project worth telling you about tonight. So once the route was settled, the preparation became real. Preparing the motorcycle took more than 6 months. There were upgrades that needed to be completed, maintenance that could not be ignored, equipment that had to be tested. The bike needed to be capable of handling extreme heat, long distances, changing weather, multiple days of serious riding. On a normal ride, a small mechanical issue can be inconvenience, but on a cross-country ride, a small issue can become a major problem, hundreds of miles from home. So I worked through the bike piece by piece, what needed to be upgraded, what needed to be replaced, what needed to be inspected. And what would make the ride safer? What would make the long days more manageable? And also, what might fail after several thousand miles? The motorcycle had to be prepared for the entire journey, not just the first day. Then there's the packing. I mean, when you're preparing for a ride across country, you begin imagining every possible situation. There's got hot weather, cold weather, rain, wind, mechanical problems, navigation problems. I mean, long stretches with no services available. What clothing do you take? Safety gear, tools, battery chargers, medications, hydration, emergency supplies. I mean, you want to carry everything you could possibly need, but you have to remember you're still traveling on a motorcycle. There's only so much room. Every item takes space and adds weight. So packing becomes a process of constant decisions. Do I really need this? What happens if I leave it behind? Can one item serve two purposes? Will it stay secure at highway speed? I packed and unpacked. I organized, reorganized, reconsidered, made lists, remade the lists. I was trying to keep the bike balanced and manageable while still carrying what I might need. Meanwhile, we were also planning the chicken dance in Spokane. That's where we originally planned it. And when Molly and I got married, we came up with an idea that we would do the chicken dance on our 25th anniversary. It was one of those funny promises that became part of our story. 25 years later, it was time to keep that promise. But then the original venue in Spokane fell through. For a moment, that part of the plan was uncertain. We had friends and family coming. Molly's flight needed to be scheduled, and the celebration was part of the entire route. That was when Clay from Nexus stepped up. He offered to let us hold a chicken dance at his office in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. It was an amazing gesture, and it fit the occasion perfectly. It gave us a place to gather, allowed the celebration to continue, and became another example of how people step forward throughout this entire journey whenever something did not go according to plan. With the venue secured, the final preparations were wrapped up. The motorcycle was ready, the route was set, the bags are packed, family plans are in place, the annual ride with Warrior Creed was on the calendar, Chicken Dance had a home, the route had a purpose, the stops had meaning. And something during that process, it stopped simply becoming a motorcycle trip. It became the One More Day project. I want to sit on that packing list for a second because it's not really about a motorcycle. Every one of us carries a limited amount of room in our schedule, in our head, our energy. And just like on the bike, you cannot carry everything. Grudges take up space, old arguments take up space, fear of what other people think will take up space. Meanwhile, things that actually keep you upright, the phone call to somebody who loves you, the honest conversation, a night of real sleep, often get left behind because they don't feel urgent in the moment. Preparing this bike for 6 months taught me to ask one question about everything I was tempted to load onto it. Does this help me finish the ride, or does it feel like it should just be there? So that thought process changes as you're planning. The idea behind the One More Day project came from a concern that has been with me for a long time. Veterans are trained to endure. We are trained to carry weight. We're trained to operate under pressure, complete the mission, and take care of the people around us and keep moving even when we're hurting. And these qualities, they can make us strong, but they can also make it difficult to admit when we're struggling. A veteran may be surrounded by people and still feel completely alone. He may look strong on the outside while everything inside him is falling apart. He may believe that asking for help makes him weak. He may convince himself that his family would be better off without him. He may believe there is no way forward because he cannot see the entire road. That's where the words one more day become important. One more day does not demand that you solve every problem. It does not require you to know what next year is going to look like. It does not require you to pretend that everything is fine. It simply asks you to not make a permanent decision during a temporary moment of pain. Stay, call somebody, answer the phone, walk into the next room, talk to another veteran, tell somebody the truth. Give the people who love you one more opportunity to stand beside you. Give life one more opportunity to surprise you. That is the message that I wanted to carry across the country. I wanted to use something I understood, long distance motorcycle riding, to create a conversation about something that's often difficult to discuss. The ride would be a physical, the mission would be emotional, and every mile would carry the same message. You matter enough to stay for one more day. This mattered to me for reasons beyond statistics. I sat with men who do not think they will make it to the next morning. Hell, they didn't even think they'd make it to the next hour. I've made phone calls I was afraid to make and received calls I'm grateful somebody made to me. Veteran suicide is not an abstract policy conversation. It's a friend who stopped texting back. It's a name that used to show up at the reunion that doesn't show up anymore. It's a phone that never rings again. I built this ride because I wanted to put my body behind a message I have said from behind a microphone for years. The words are easy to say. 7,000 miles is harder to fake. I wanted the veteran listening to know that somebody is willing to bleed a little, ache a little, and risk a little discomfort just to remind him he is not carrying this alone. I want to be honest about something else. I did not ride this because I have all the answers. I rode it because I have felt the weight of what I'm describing, and I know how heavy it gets when you carry it in silence. I'm not standing above men talking to tonight. I'm standing next to them. Every mile of this route ran through towns full of veterans nobody's checking in on, families sitting up at night worried about someone they love, and communities that have no idea how close some of the neighbors are to giving up. That is not a statistic to me. It's the reason I got up at 3 in the morning in Yuma, Arizona, pointed a motorcycle east instead of staying home, where it would have been a lot easier and safer just to talk about it. Look, the journey, it began in Yuma, Arizona. I left approximately 3 o'clock in the morning, knowing the first leg would require some serious miles. There's something different about leaving before sunrise. The world is quiet, traffic is light, most people are sleeping, and for a while, it's just you, the motorcycle, the headlights, and your thoughts. There's also something powerful about finally beginning a journey you have spent a year planning. For months, the ride existed only on maps, lists, schedules, weather forecasts, and conversations. And suddenly, I was no longer preparing to leave. I had left. The bags were strapped down, the engine was running, Yuma was behind me, and the one more day project was officially on the road. Leaving Arizona meant dealing with desert conditions and long distances immediately. There was no easy warm up. The heat became real, and it became real fast. The miles were real. The first several days were about movement, endurance, fuel stops, hydration, staying alert, and managing the body and mind. The first day took me from Yuma, Arizona to Weatherford, Texas. That's 1,135 miles in a single day. One of the longest and largest days of the entire journey. And it came right at the beginning. There was no gradual buildup, no warm up. It was here. The mission began with more than 1,100 miles. On the second day, I rode from Weatherford, Texas to Dayton, Ohio. And that was another 1,041 miles. And by the way, that was on 4 hours of sleep. And by the end of the second day, I'd already covered more than 2,100 miles in 2 days, 2,000 miles. 2 long days of managing heat, traffic, fuel, hydration, fatigue, and focus. The third day was shorter by comparison, but still a serious ride. I traveled 464 miles from Dayton, Ohio to Whitesville, New York. And when I finally arrived, I had completed approximately 2,640 miles in 3 days. These are not casual touring days. They were long, demanding days in the saddle. And there's a point during a 1,000-mile journey when excitement no longer becomes enough. Motivation is no longer enough. You begin relying on discipline. You're focused on the next fuel stop, the next town, then the next 100 miles. You stop thinking about the total distance because the total distance can become mentally overwhelming. It's too much. So you have to break the mission down into manageable pieces. And that's one of the first lessons of the One More Day project. When the entire journey feels impossible, reduce the size of the problem. You don't have to ride 1,135 miles all at once. You ride to the next fuel stop, then the next one, then the next one after that. You do not have to fix your entire life tonight. You have to make it through the next hour. When I finally arrived in New York, the bucket list goal of riding cross country had become real. But even then, the project was only beginning. Sit with those numbers for a second. 1,135 miles, 4 hours of sleep. 1,041 miles, 4 hours of sleep, 464 miles. Over 2,600 miles in 3 days at 62 years old, in Arizona heat, Texas wind, and everything else the road threw at me. And I'm not telling you this to impress you. I'm telling you this because somewhere out there is a man who thinks he cannot handle one more day. And I want him to understand that the body and the mind can carry far more than we give it credit for. When there's a reason behind the miles, the reason is what makes the distance survivable. Take the reason away, and those same miles would have broken me by day two. Take the reason in front of you, keep it, and you will be amazed at what you can ride through. People often think that endurance means something doesn't hurt you. That's not endurance. Endurance means it hurts, yet you continue with purpose. It means that you acknowledge the discomfort without allowing discomfort to make every decision for you. During this trip, there were moments when the miles became heavy. There is no doubt. My body felt the distance. The fatigue accumulated. The weather changed. The plans had to be adjusted. Hell, the bike required attention. And mentally, I had to keep reminding myself why I was out there. There's a danger becoming so focused on toughness that we stop listening to what our bodies or minds are telling us. Real endurance is not recklessness. It is not ignoring every warning sign. It's knowing the difference between discomfort and danger. It's knowing when to push and when to recover. It's knowing when you can continue alone and when you need assistance. And that lesson applies far beyond motorcycle riding. Many men, especially veterans, confuse strength with silence. We believe strength means carrying everything without letting anyone know how heavy it's become. Sometimes strength means saying, look, I'm not doing well. I need someone to talk to. I need help getting through tonight. I don't trust myself to be alone right now. But that's not weakness. That is situational awareness. That is survival. That is completing the mission. That is what veterans are trained to do. That's what soldiers are trained to do. I think about this every time I hear a veteran describe himself as fine when his eyes tell me something else. Endurance was never meant to be a mask. It's meant to be a tool you use when the moment calls for it, and then set down when the moment is past. A man who never sets it down is not tougher than the rest of us. He's just further from help than he needs to be. We used to always say it's easy to be hard, it's hard to be smart. Somewhere on that highway between Dayton and Whitesville, with my body already carrying more than 2,000 miles, I made myself say out loud, I was not tired, I'm not defeated. Tired, not defeated. Naming it did not slow me down. It let me manage it instead of letting it manage me. That's the difference between endurance training that you're never taught. It's the difference that people keep alive by hanging on to. I've watched too many veterans treat the word tired as a confession instead of a data point. We are trained to push past exhaustion because the mission demanded it. And that training saved lives overseas. But civilian life does not run on the same clock as deployment. Nobody is grading you on how long you can white knuckle it through a bad week. There's no medal for suffering in silence at home. The mission at home is different. The mission at home is staying alive long enough to see your kids grow up, long enough to watch your marriage get easier, long enough to become the guy some younger veteran calls when he's having his own bad night. You cannot be that guy if you've never learned how to say the word tired out loud. Somewhere on that ride, I stopped treating fatigue as an enemy. I started treating it as a messenger. It was not trying to stop me, it was trying to inform me. And once I made that mental shift, the whole trip got easier to manage. Not because the miles got shorter, but because I stopped fighting the information that I needed. Now, after spending time in New York, it was time to begin the next major part of the journey. The route west took me toward Lake Michigan. The ferry crossing that had begun as one of Tony's suggestions during the planning process now had become a real part of the trip. Now, there's something memorable about riding a motorcycle on a ferry in the middle of a cross-country journey. For so many miles, the motorcycle had been carrying me. Now the motorcycle and I were both being carried across the lake. The ferry became more than a way to avoid riding around Chicago. It became a pause between major sections of the journey, a chance to step off the highway, look back at what had already been completed, and think about everything still ahead. And once the ferry reached the other side, the ride continued into Wisconsin towards Minnesota. The road had changed. The landscape had changed. The pace of the journey had also changed, but the mission remained the same. At every stop, every conversation, and every update, I had another opportunity to share the words, one more day. And here's the part I've not said out loud on this podcast before. This ride cost me something. It was not free. It was not easy for the people that I love. It cost 6 months of evenings and weekends spent on the bike instead of on the couch with Molly. It cost real money in upgrades, gear, gas, tires, lodging. It cost me physically in ways that I'm still recovering from as I sit here recording this. And it cost Molly a level of worry I cannot fully repay, wondering whether the next update from the road would be good news or not. We like to say HOPA, home, one piece, alive. And that message is constant. And every time I check in, every time I talk to Molly when I'm on the road, I always say HOPA, and she always says HOPA. If one of us is traveling, we say home, one piece, alive. That's the mission. And I'm not telling you this because I want you to feel sorry for me. I'm telling you this because too many people only see the highlight reel and assume purpose is free. It's not. Purpose has a bill and you pay that in advance before you know if the mission even works. I paid that bill because I believed the message was worth more than the cost. If you're building something that matters, expect the bill. Pay it anyway. I bring this up on the ferry specifically because that crossing was the first real quiet I had during the entire trip. No highway noise, no engine, just water, time to think. And then that quiet, the cost of what I was doing finally caught up with me. I thought about Molly back home managing everything I normally handle, on top of worrying about me. I thought about the money I'd spent that could have gone somewhere else. I thought about whether the message would actually reach anybody, whether I was just a 62-year-old man burning vacation days on a personal mission nobody asked for. That doubt was real, and I'm not going to pretend it wasn't there. But doubt is not the same as being wrong. I let the ferry carry me across that lake, and I let the doubt sit there next to me without letting it turn the bike around. Doubt rode with me a lot of this trip. It just never got a hold of the handlebars. One of the most meaningful moments of the entire journey, it happened in Minnesota. I'm riding down the road, 85 miles an hour. Bike got squirrely. I pulled over. I got a flat tire. Flat tire on a motorcycle is not just an inconvenience. And depending on the speed, the road, and how the flat tire fails, it can become a serious emergency pretty quickly. I found myself on the side of the road, hot, with my plans and schedule suddenly becoming much less important. But I wasn't there for long. Guy in a pickup truck, blue collar worker named Sean, he saw me on the side of the road, stopped to help. He didn't know me. He didn't know anything about me or about the One More Day project. He simply saw another person who needed help and he pulled over. Sean helped me find the nail that had punctured the tire and started working with me to get it plugged. And while I was waiting for Sean to return with some supplies, another motorcycle pulled up. The rider was a Marine veteran who had served in both Iraq and Afghanistan. And we started talking. I told him about the One More Day project and the mission behind the ride. He told me about the men from his unit who had taken their own lives after returning home. That when he first got home, it was one a week, one a month, one every 2 months, one every 6 months. Now, once every other year seems like it continues to happen. And in that moment, the ride became much more than a message printed on a shirt. I could see the pain in him. We shared kind words, but there are certain experiences that words can only do so much. Sometimes another veteran does not need you to explain the pain. You see it in his face. You hear it in the way he pauses, and you feel the weight behind the names he remembers. When we talk about veteran suicide, it is easy for people to become numb to the numbers. But every number was someone's friend, someone's brother, someone's son, someone's father, someone who served beside another Marine or soldier who still carries the memory of losing him. After Sean returned, we plugged the tire, but the damage was just too great. I just wasn't able to really continue. So I had to get to the next gas stop, next gas station, and then I realized I couldn't continue. So I got a hold of Rights Like Harley, and they sent a driver about 44 miles to come and get me. About 88-mile round trip. We loaded the motorcycle, took me back to the dealership, replaced the tire, and because of all those people, I was able to get back on the road and reach my scheduled stop just as the sun was going down. This made an important message hit home. Nobody completes a journey like this entirely alone. Think about the chain that day required. Sean had to be driving in that particular stretch of road on that particular hour and had to be the kind of man who stops. The Marine had to be riding the same route that same afternoon and had to be willing to talk about something that most men bury. Rights like Harley had to have a driver available and willing to go 40 miles out of their way for a stranger. Remove any one of these people and the day looks very different. That's not luck. That's what happens when enough people in a community decide that stopping for a stranger is simply what you do. I want more of that in this world. I think it starts with each of us deciding to be the version of Sean somebody else needs on their worst day. And by the time I reached Glasgow, Montana, I could feel the accumulation of the miles. The body keeps score. Even when your mind is committed, fatigue shows up. Your reactions slow, your focus takes more effort. The small things become irritating. Your patience changes. Your decision making can suffer. I remember recognizing that the miles are becoming to feel heavier, and that recognition mattered. Sometimes we believe admitting something is difficult will make us less capable, but in reality, honest self assessment makes us safer and more effective. You cannot adjust for your problem you refuse to acknowledge. You cannot rest if you continue pretending you're not tired. You can't heal if you continue pretending you're not hurt. And you cannot receive support if nobody knows you need it. There is strength in being honest about the weight. And here's the uncomfortable verdict, and I'm not going to soften it. Toughness without maintenance is not toughness. It's a countdown clock. I have watched men I respect run themselves into the ground because they treated exhaustion as a personal failure instead of information. They did not stop until something broke, a marriage, a career, sometimes a life. The road does not care how proud you are, neither does the body. If you keep riding past the point your body is telling you to rest, the bill comes due. And usually it comes due at the worst possible time, on the worst possible stretch of highway. I said that out loud to myself in Glasgow because I needed to hear it more than the audience did. When I took the video, when I got to Glasgow, I watched the video after and I looked at my face and saw the exhaustion. There's a price to be paid. The message is not that the road will always make you feel easy. The message is that feeling the weight does not mean the journey is over. It may mean you need to rest. It may mean you need fuel. It may mean you need maintenance. It may mean you need conversation, but it does not automatically mean you failed. You are still in the fight. The men who make it home are not the ones who never felt the weight. They're the ones who respected it enough to do something about it before it made the decision for them. And that's not softness. That's discipline in the most honest form. And it's the same discipline that keeps a man alive long enough to see the next sunrise. I want the same pattern. I want to name this the pattern I've seen kill good men, not on a battlefield, but years after they come home. It starts small, skipping sleep, skipping the appointment, skipping the phone call from a buddy checking in. And none of these decisions look dangerous in isolation, but they stack. The same way fatigue stacked on me mile after mile until Glasgow, Montana forced me to admit that what my body already knew. If you wait for the moment it becomes undeniable, you've already waited too long. Look, Glasgow was not a crisis, it was a warning, and I chose to listen instead of ignoring it. I want every man listening to find his own Glasgow, the early signal, and respect it before the road makes the decision for him. Find yours, name it, and actually do something about it the next time it shows up. When I reached Great Falls, Montana, the project connected with the annual Canine Care fundraiser and my brothers from Warrior Creed. This stop had been one of the central points of the route from the beginning. It's not simply a place I happened to pass through. It was part of the purpose. The Canine Care fundraiser helps raise money for service animals, for veterans. That connection mattered because suicide prevention is not only about stopping someone during the worst moment of their life, that's the emergency stage. The next part is helping them build a life that feels worth continuing. Service dogs can provide companionship, grounding, routine, confidence, security, and support. They can recognize distress. They can interrupt certain behaviors. They can help a veteran navigate situations they might otherwise feel impossible. And they can become a bridge back into life. That is why Canine Care fit naturally into the One More Day project. One more day is immediate decision to stay. Ongoing support helps turn that day into a week and into a month, into a year. Preventing suicide is not about slogans, it's about relationships, access, resources, community, and purpose. It's about making sure that when someone reaches out, there's somebody on the other side of that call. The fundraiser was also a reminder that brotherhood does not end with military service. When your service ends, brotherhood doesn't end. The uniform may come off, but that need for connection remains. Veterans still need a tribe. We still need people who understand the language, the humor, the experience, and sometimes just the silence. Spending time with my brothers from Warrior Creed reminded me that the journey was not simply about carrying a message from one location to another. It was about strengthening the connections that make the one more day possible. I want to be specific about what that looked like on the ground because it's easy for me to talk about in generalities. It looked like men who had not seen each other in a year, picking up a conversation like no time had passed. It looked like somebody quietly checking in on a brother who had gone through a rough deployment before anyone had to ask him to. It looked like the dollars raised for a dog that will one day interrupt the panic attack a family cannot. Brotherhood is not a slogan on a patch. In Great Falls, it was a fundraiser, a cookout, a room full of men who simply show up for each other years after the uniform came off. I think about the veterans who do not have a warrior creed. They don't have a home. Not everybody landed near a group like this when they came home. Some men left the service and went straight back to a hometown and nobody who could understand what they had just carried. That's a big part of why I ride and why I talk about this on the podcast. If you do not have a tribe like this yet, it does not mean that one does not exist for you. It means you just haven't found it yet. Look for service veterans organizations in your area, VSOs, veteran service organizations. Look for canine care groups. Look for places that fit you. Look for the guys who show up at a fundraiser on a Saturday just to stand around a grill with other people who get it. That room in Great Falls didn't build itself overnight. Yours won't either, but it starts with showing up just once. Now, after Great Falls, I rode to Spokane and completed the second major leg of the journey. By that point, I'd covered more than 5,700 miles. I'd crossed the country and dealt with heat, weather, long days, and fatigue, flat tires, changing plans, and all the normal challenges that come with a ride of this size. Spokane gave me the opportunity to pause. I was able to work during the week, share the mission with more people, and reflect on how much had already been achieved. There was a real sense of accomplishment. The message had reached veterans, families, riders, friends, and even strangers. People had followed the journey, shared the posts, offered encouragement, and told me their own stories. I was in a grocery store, and I got to share with folks in a grocery store in line to buy my groceries about the mission. But even while reflecting on everything accomplished, I knew the journey was not over. The final leg was still ahead, and I knew it would probably be the hardest part of the entire ride. Look, my body had already absorbed more than 5,700 miles. The fatigue had accumulated. The excitement of starting the journey had passed. So Spokane was not only a place to celebrate what had been completed, it was a place to prepare mentally and physically for what was still ahead. And during that week, the motorcycle went in for some maintenance. The bike accumulated thousands of miles and needed attention. There's a lesson in that. Machines require maintenance. Nobody questions it. We change the oil, we check the tires, we inspect the brakes, we tighten what's loosened, replace what is worn down. We understand that maintenance prevents failure. But when it comes to ourselves, we sometimes behave as if needing rest, counseling, medical care, friendship, or recovery means we're defective. It does not. Maintenance is not failure. Maintenance is how you remain operational. It's how you remain in the mission. While motorcycle was being serviced, another flat tire occurred. I mean, this could have happened anywhere, including during the final leg, on an isolated stretch of highway, at high speed, hundreds of miles from help. It could have happened anywhere, but instead it happened where the motorcycle was already in the shop. That was just crazy. I was so fortunate. The tire could be repaired in a safe environment before I began the hardest section of the journey. Sometimes what initially looks like just another setback is actually protection. Sometimes the problem reveals itself at exactly the right time. That flat tire could have stopped the final leg. Instead, it was caught before the final leg ever began. I keep coming back to the timing of that second flat because it's the cleanest example that I have from this entire trip of why pause matters. If I had skipped Spokane, if I had pushed straight through, if I felt behind schedule or because stopping felt like weakness, that tire likely fails somewhere between Spokane, Washington, and Nevada instead of on a parking lot with a mechanic less than 20 feet away. The stop was not a delay in the mission. The stop was part of the mission. I like to think a lot of men treat rest as something that they have to earn or apologize for. I would rather you think of it as a way that I think of it, as a scheduled maintenance that protects everything you're trying to build. Not a break from the work, but a required part of it. Schedule your maintenance before the road forces the appointment on you. And during that same Spokane stop, I was reminded that the journey is not only about miles, motorcycles, or the mission. It's also about the people waiting when I got off the bike. That Saturday, friends and family gathered with Molly and I to celebrate 25 years of marriage by attending our chicken dance. And when Molly and I got married, we came up with the idea. We said that when we reached our 25th anniversary, we'd do the chicken dance. And 25 years later, surrounded by friends and family, we kept that promise. The original venue had fallen through, but Clay from Nexus stepped up and offered the use of his office. That act of generosity allowed the celebration to happen exactly when it needed to happen. It was another example of how this entire journey kept coming together through actions of other people. It was fun, it was ridiculous, we had a blast, but it was also meaningful and it was ours. And there's something powerful about celebrating 25 years of marriage in the middle of this journey. The One More Day project is about choosing to continue. Marriage, in many ways, is also built one day at a time. One promise, one difficult season, one shared laugh, one disagreement worked through, one memory, one more day together. 25 years does not happen in a single moment. It happens through thousands of ordinary days when two people continue choosing each other. It's not the big things that matter, it's the little ones, the little choices every day. Chicken dance may have started as a funny idea when we first got married, but 25 years later, it represented something deeper. It represented a promise remembered, a promise kept, a life built together, and the importance of being present for the milestone that once seemed so far away. That celebration gave me another opportunity to remember why staying matters. The people we love are part of our journey. They are affected by our decisions. They share our victories. They also help carry our pain. They wait for us to come home. The Spokane stop gave me time for work, recover, service the motorcycle, celebrate my marriage, share the mission, and reflect on how far the project had already traveled. The pause was part of the mission. Rest does not erase progress. Celebrating does not weaken commitment. Stopping temporarily does not mean quitting. Sometimes the most disciplined thing you can do is stop long enough to make sure both the rider and the motorcycle are capable of continuing safely. Look, Molly and I did not have the easiest year leading to that anniversary. The years. Planning the cross-country motorcycle ride while also planning our 25th wedding celebration adds pressure to a marriage that a lot of couples would choose just not to do. Logistics, moments where she had every right to ask why this ride mattered enough to build an entire route around it. She kept choosing to support it anyway and kept choosing to come for me. She kept supporting me so that I could keep choosing to come home to her at the end of every leg. This is the part of the story I want men listening to hear clearly. The mission does not replace the marriage. The mission only works because the marriage is strong enough to carry it. Doing a chicken dance in Spokane, surrounded by people who love us, was proof that 25 years of choosing each other was worth every bit of work it took to get there. 100%. Now, moving on to the final leg. The final leg began with one of the biggest days of the entire journey. It was early, the road was long, and I knew I had over 1,000 miles ahead of me. The last stage of a journey creates a unique mental challenge. You're close enough to home, you begin to imagine the finish, but you're still far enough away that losing focus can become dangerous. You cannot mentally arrive before you physically arrive. You still have to respect every mile, every stop, every vehicle around you, every change in weather, every sign of fatigue. I knew the body was already carrying more than 5,700 miles of accumulated fatigue, and I knew there would not be much room for error. But I also knew the bike had been serviced. The tire problem had been discovered before departure. I had rested. I had celebrated with my family. I had reflected on the mission. And now it was time to finish. The final push required the same principle that carried the entire project. Do not become overwhelmed by the distance. Handle the road directly in front of you. Get to the next fuel stop, then the next, then the next. Stay hydrated, stay alert, listen to the motorcycle, listen to the body. Do not allow the excitement of finishing to make you careless. There are moments during a long ride when the mind starts calculating everything. How many miles remain? How many hours? How many fuel stops? What time will I arrive? Can I maintain this pace? But there are also moments when calculation gives way to determination. You stop negotiating with the distance. You accept that the miles are there and you continue. And at the end of that long day, I reached Las Vegas. More than 1,000 miles beneath the motorcycle in one day, one of the biggest days that I've ever spent in the saddle. That was a very tiring day. but the journey was not even complete. I still had the final section home. And there's a feeling that comes when familiar roads begin appearing. The landscape changes, the signs become recognizable, the desert begins to look like home. You recognize and realize the trip that existed in your mind for more than a year is now almost complete. The maps have become memories, planned stops, real places. The imagined difficulties became experiences. But the finish is not simply the end of the ride. It was the completion of a promise to carry the message, a promise to complete the route, a promise to honor the people who did not get one more day, and a promise to speak to the people who may be wondering whether they should take one. There's a particular science in the last 200 miles of a ride like this, a silence I was not expecting. It's not exhaustion, it's not excitement, it's something closer to gratitude mixed with disbelief that the thing you spent a year planning is actually about to be over. I rode through those last stretches of desert thinking about every person who touched this route: Molly, Tony, Elliot, Arlene, Clay, Sean, even the Marine on the roadside, mechanics at the Harley shop, brothers of Warrior Creed. None of them rode a single mile of this with me, yet every one of them was on the motorcycle with me. That's what I want you to understand about a mission like this one. The miles are yours. The reason you can finish rarely is. Look, the One More Day project proves several things to me. Purpose changes the meaning of pain. A difficult day feels different when the discomfort is connected to something larger than yourself. Strength is not the absence of vulnerability. I spent much of my life operating as a warrior. The warrior handles the mission, accepts discomfort, stays focused, pushes through, protects the person beside him. That energy helped me to complete this ride. But this project is not just about the warrior. There comes a point in a man's life when the goal is no longer to prove that he can fight the battle himself. It becomes, the goal becomes using what he has learned to protect, guide, encourage, and strengthen others. That's the movement from a warrior to a king. A king doesn't need to be the strongest person in every room. He creates the strength in people around him. He simply does not complete the mission. He gives the mission meaning. He does not demand attention. He uses his voice to make sure the overlooked are seen. I'll tell you this much tonight. The One More Day project did not end when I rolled back in Arizona. It changed shape. What started as a solo ride, turning into something bigger, something involving more people, more communities than one man on a motorcycle could ever reach alone. I spent the last few weeks since getting home thinking about how to build that next chapter the right way. Not rushed, not for the sake of headline, with the same care that went into the 6 months of preparing for this bike. That effort that I put into preparing my motorcycle and loading it, etc. That's what I want to bring to the table. That same dedication. I'm not ready to announce it yet. I want it to be right before I bring it to you, but I wanted you to know what's coming because the mission does not stop because the motorcycle is parked in the garage. I want to speak directly to the veteran who may be listening to this alone. Maybe you're sitting in your vehicle. Maybe you're awake in the middle of the night. Maybe your family's in the next room, but you feel like there is a wall between you and everyone else. Maybe you're tired of explaining. Maybe you're ashamed of where your thoughts have gone. Maybe you believe that because you survived worse, you should be able to handle this by yourself. Listen to me. You do not have to earn the right to ask for help. You do not have to wait until the situation becomes worse. You do not have to have the right words. You can simply say, I need you to stay with me. I am having a bad night. I am thinking about hurting myself. I need help. These words may be difficult to say. Say them anyway. Call another veteran. Call someone in your family. Call a friend. Call a crisis line. Go somewhere where you will not be alone. Put distance between yourself and anything that might harm you. You do not have to feel hopeful in order to stay. You have to stay because someone else has hopes for you. You can stay because your thinking may look different tomorrow. You can stay because this chapter is not the entire book. I know some of you listening tonight are driving home from a shift, sitting in a garage, avoiding going inside. It's there's somebody out there that needs to hear your voice, and you may need to hear someone else's voice. Don't quit. You don't need justification. Just say, hey, I'm checking in. You might be the one who's having the issue. You might be the one who's in pain. You might be the one suffering. And just to call someone and say, hey, I'm checking in, to check in on someone else is establishing that connection. You don't have to say, I'm having a bad day. I'm checking in on you. How are you doing? Just have that conversation. It gives you a purpose. Check on your people. You don't have to wait for somebody to call you. You don't have to fix everything today. Just because this ride is over, the project should not be over. Somebody tomorrow will need a phone call, a conversation, or a reason to stay. You don't need to cross the country. You don't need a motorcycle. You only need to be willing to show up for somebody. Make the call. Have the uncomfortable conversation. Stop when somebody needs help. Listen when somebody shares their pain. Accept help when you're the one who needs it. Keep the promises that matter. Celebrate the people who have walked through this life beside you. When I think about this project, I remember the milestones. Years spent turning a bucket list into a dream into a plan. Molly encouraged me. Tony helping shape the route, the ferry ride, the flat tires, the roadside conversations. All the people who helped make it happen. And my celebration that I got to have, keeping a promise, the last pushes. But what stands out is not the highway or the lines on the road. It was the people. That's what stood out for me. The people that I got to see, talk to, and keep that connection alive. Celebrate the people who have walked through this life beside you. This is Big Mike, Sensei. Thank you for listening to the Final Boss podcast. Remember this, you are not alone. Never give up. One more day. Thank you again.
Welcome to Tech Tuesday on the Final Boss podcast, where innovation meets attitude, and the future gets decoded one byte at a time. I'm your host, Turbo the CEO, and your co-host, Mike Foth. And today we're diving deep into the tech trenches to uncover the tools, trends, and truths shaping tomorrow. Whether you're a code slinger, gadget geek, or just tech curious, this is your weekly power-up. So grab your controller, plug in, and let's level up.